successful. Son discovered his mother cleaning bathrooms in his own office. Seeing her on her knees, silently crying, he called the manager, and Baron Smith looked from his office on the top floor of the building. A view that reminded him of how far he had come. He had gone from a childhood in the outskirts with modest dinners and schoolwork, under the flickering light of a lamp, to a success that many dreamed of. Now he wore an impeccable suit and drove luxury cars and hosted dinners where he toasted with entrepreneurs and influential figures. Every detail of his life seemed carefully designed to reflect the triumph he had worked tirelessly to get. There, leaving behind a history that in his mind didn't fit this new reality, his mother, Martha, was the central figure of that humble past. A woman with weathered hands and a gentle voice who raised him alone and devoted herself to giving him an education. Martha always said her son would go far, but Baron was sure even she couldn't imagine the world he inhabited. Now, of course, Baron and Martha stayed in touch, but it had become a formal, distant relationship. His mother's calls always came at inconvenient times, as if the past were trying to intrude on the polished image of his present. He used to send her money and gifts every month. A check that Martha accepted with a mix of gratitude and resignation. Through Baron didn't know it. He believed that was enough, that those remittances represented his commitment to his family, but they also kept his mother at a distance. Keeping away is a way to protect yourself. He thought his wife Eva had been a crucial part of Baron's transformation since he met her. She made it clear that to be part of his world, he needed to refine himself. Eva came from a wealthy family, where dinners were held in rooms adorned with silver and pork, and words were always measured and calculated. Her sophisticated beauty-controlled laughter and the confidence with which she handled any situation were part of what attracted Baron so much. But that attraction also brought with it a shift in focus. Eva gently at first, and then directly pushed him to let go of his past. "It's better if you're discreet about your history," she said with an expression suggesting she was doing it for his own good. Thus, the figure of Martha began to fade from Baron's life like a shadow disappearing into the distance, and the frequency of visits decreased until they were nearly non-existent. When they talked, he told her about his travels and his company's achievements, but he avoided details of his life with Eva, knowing his mother might sense something he wasn't ready to admit. Their conversations became monologues in which Martha only listened, accepting her son's distant feelings in every conversation. The coldness he thought he was hiding. Well, Baron didn't realize that the more success he accumulated, the further he drifted from Martha and the essence of who he truly was. One afternoon, while reviewing the organization of the gala he would host at his company, his assistant handed him a call from his mother. Martha wanted to know if her son would be in town that weekend. It had been months since she last saw him, and she wanted to invite him to lunch at her modest apartment. Baron hesitated, looking for an excuse, but in the end, he reluctantly accepted committing to it if his schedule allowed. Martha, with the same patience she always had, replied, "I understand, son. I'll be glad to see you if you can." She hung up without reproach and without a hint of disappointment, though inside the silence of her home reminded her how much she missed her son. Eva, who had overheard part of the conversation, raised an eyebrow and, with a grimace of displeasure, suggested that instead of making visits that complicated his schedule, Baron could send her a gift. "A token to show his appreciation. She'll be fine with something symbolic," she said, her tone making her discomfort evident. Baron, though feeling a slight pang of guilt, accepted the suggestion. It was easier to send her a bouquet and a small present than to spend a day of his weekend in the place where he grew up. Thus, the weekend arrived, and instead of seeing his mother, Baron kept his promise to Eva to accompany her to a charity gala. The event was full of influential figures, and as he mingled from group to group, introducing himself and being introduced, Baron felt he was exactly where he had always dreamed of being. The lights shone brightly, conversations revolved around business and ambitious projects, and the luxury of his surroundings seemed to validate all his decisions. However, at some point during the evening, something broke his concentration. It was a simple thought, a fleeting image of his mother in the kitchen of that small apartment, probably waiting for the doorbell to ring. The image was so vivid it disturbed him, and for a moment, The opulence of the gala seemed superficial, AA noticed, and asked him if something was wrong, but he merely smiled, hiding his turmoil. It was easier to maintain his composure than to explain the conflict that, although he didn't want to admit it, was beginning to stir within him that night. Baron returned home with AA, who appeared satisfied with the evening. He, on the other hand, felt empty. He had gained a lot, but he was starting to realize what he had lost in the process, yet he still didn't know how deep that emptiness was, or how far he was willing to go to confront it. The night of the gala at his company arrived, and the Baron was in his element. He wore one of his best suits and moved with a confidence he had cultivated over the years. The evening had been meticulously planned. Guests, from partners and investors to prominent business people, gathered to celebrate the success of his company. The tables were adorned with white flowers, and candle holders emitting a soft light music floated in the air, and toasts sounded amidst laughter and light conversations. It was a night designed to impress, a night where Baron was to be the central figure. AA, as always, was by his side, smiling and charming, acting as the perfect complement to her husband. Their eyes met occasionally, and he felt a superficial satisfaction, convinced he had achieved the ideal he had long pursued. But amidst the toasts and chatter, Baron felt a sudden, annoying urge. He remembered that he had forgotten an important document in his office. Ava noticed his discomfort and quietly asked what was wrong. Baron, with a slight apologetic smile, explained that he needed to retrieve the document quickly. Eva, with a controlled smile, gave him a nod of approval and returned to a conversation with a group of guests. Baron excused himself and headed to the elevator. As he ascended, the noise of the party faded, leaving him in an odd silence. Upon reaching the office floor, the hallway was dimly lit and wrapped in an almost sepulchral air. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor as he walked toward his office, the echo of each step making the space feel even emptier. But then something made him stop. From the reflection in a mirror in the hallway, Baron saw a familiar figure crouched near the bathrooms. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but as he approached cautiously, his vision cleared. It was an older woman with a gray hair tied up and slow movements, cleaning the floor in a janitor's uniform. Baron felt something in his chest constrict as he recognized his mother, Martha, who seemed oblivious to his presence. His heart raced, and a mix of disbelief and shame flooded over him as he tried to process what he was seeing. Martha was on the ground, scrubbing hard at a stain that wouldn't come out around her. Cleaning buckets and supplies gave the atmosphere a humble appearance that contrasted painfully with the opulence of the party. Baron felt a pang in his stomach seeing her hands, which he remembered as warm and strong in his childhood, now worn and rough, barely holding the broom. She struggled to push across the cold floor. Martha paused for a moment, letting out a weary sigh with the back of her hand. She wiped her eyes, allowing the exhaustion and sadness she had carried in silence to seep through. For a moment, Baron watched in silence, unable to move, trapped in the reflection of that image that tormented him. He felt shame, anger, and a deep pain, as if all his success and the decisions he had made were stabbing him. In that instant, he couldn't comprehend how it was